talking to, it's you that I'm talking to. I need everyone to take a stand, 'cause it's you that I'm talking to, it's you that I'm talking to. I need everyone to take a stand, 'cause right now is needed time, 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 right now is needed time. Well, I'm down on my bended knee, and I'm down, and I'm praying, please won't love, please come round here. Well, I'm down on my bended knee, and I'm asking, please, please, please won't love, come by here. 'Cause right now is needed time, 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 right now is needed time.
It's not every day that you get to hear Lightnin' Hopkins be channeled. Thank you, Brian. That was just absolutely wonderful. And what a beautiful day it is. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati. It's such a bright, sunny day. We need it. We need it bad after this winter. So my name is Tim Krause, and I use he, his pronouns, and I am grateful to be here with all of you. Welcome to our church. First Unitarian Church is occupying the land that was once the sacred space of the Adena and the Hopewell cultures and the Shawnee and the Miamia. We are a community committed to social justice and also committed to supporting the various spiritual and ethical paths of our members. We are striving to be as much of a welcoming community as we can be. For we know that we can only grow to become better people by recognizing that we actually need each other. The commitment to interdependence requires us to take care of each other's needs, whether they be physical or emotional. That's why we provide for all of us gender-neutral bathrooms, hearing assistance devices, space for our children, and we also encourage you to be comfortable as possible in the sanctuary, even in these hard chairs. This is what it means for us to build beloved community, where everyone, and absolutely everyone, matters. We know that we're a work in progress and that we will make many mistakes along the journey before we get it right. But that's the point. That's what we're striving to do because we want to be better at this and we want everybody to join us on our aspirational journey. If you would like to know more about our Unitarian Universalist Church, please contact us at membercare@firstuu.com. That's membercare@firstuu.com. Today, we're welcoming one of our own to the pulpit, and we are so very proud of her. The daughter of Jenny and Mike Krueger, Meredith Krueger, grew up in our congregation. And now she's a Unitarian Universalist ministerial candidate at the Methodist Theological School of Ohio, or MTSO. It's such an honor to have you here with us, Meredith. And I'm just really excited about the fact that you're going to be here standing in this pulpit. Meredith is also going to be co-leading the service with me. There's also another young woman who was one of our own that I would like to mention now, especially since this is Black History Month. And if we get to her picture here, this is Dr. Consuelo Clark. She was the daughter of Peter and Frances Williams Clark. Now, we might remember Peter Clark because Clark Montessori is named after him. And Frances, we should know more about her. She was one of the very first African-American women to get a bachelor's degree in America. She went to Oberlin College. And they also worked with Frederick Douglass for a couple of years, living with Frederick Douglass and his wife and doing a lot of work for the abolitionist movement before they came back to Cincinnati. When they came back, they gave birth to Consuela in 1861. And Consuela Clark grew up in this congregation. She was a lifelong Unitarian. And in 1884, she became the first African-American woman licensed to practice medicine in Ohio. And one of the very first women, African-American women, to practice medicine in the country. She went to Boston University School of Medicine and graduated there, like I said, in 1884. And she practiced here in Cincinnati, specializing in women's health and doing a lot of interesting things along the way. And she actually graced us with her presence in this very sanctuary in the very early years that this building existed. In 1890, Consuelo married William R. Stewart, an attorney from Youngstown, and they moved there. And he was the first African-American member of the Ohio House of Representatives. As a member of the Youngstown Unitarian congregation, Consuelo practiced medicine among the East European immigrants and African-American workers who worked in the steel mills in Youngstown. Now, she died at an early age, 49 years old, in 1910. But when she died, all of those folks that she practiced medicine with showed up for a funeral for her in Youngstown. It was quite touching, and they were all moved by the service that she provided to them. She's buried here in Cincinnati in the Union Baptist Cemetery beside her mother, but both of their graves are unmarked, like so many African-American graves in this city. So much more can be said about Consuelo and her family and our church. Right now, we just are thankful that we can make sure that she is not erased from our memory and our history. I know it was quite a revelation when I discovered that she occupied space in our lives here in First Unitarian. Like so many other people, she was young, gifted, and Black.
Gifted and Black. Oh, what a lovely, precious dream. soul's intact. Be young, gifted, and black. Oh, how I've longed to know the truth. There are times when I look back and I am haunted by my youth. But my joy of today is that we can all be proud to say, when you're young, gifted and black, that's where it's at. That's where it's at. That's where it's at. That's where it's at.
Now we will light our chalice to begin our service. Please stand if you're willing and able, and join in singing our vision song. Now that we've lit our chalice, begun our worship service, let's turn and greet our neighbors. And when I ring the singing bowl, you will know it is time for Meredith's Story for All Ages.
Long, long, long ago, Jesus of Nazareth that is Jesus of the Bible, the Jesus that our Christian friends follow, that Jesus, he went into the desert. He was led there, in fact, by a Holy Spirit. He was there to withstand trials, to show that he was the Son of God. So it was that after many, many days, you can imagine how thirsty and hungry he was. And that is when the devil first appeared. The devil appeared and pointed to some rocks and said, "You know, Jesus, you can perform miracles. Why don't you just turn those rocks into bread? And then you can eat it and you won't be hungry anymore." But Jesus knew you can't live on bread alone. So he said no, and the devil disappeared. It wasn't long, however, until the devil reappeared once again. This time he took Jesus to the tallest structure in Jerusalem. He told him to look down there at the city. He said, "You know, Jesus, you are protected. If you want to show people that you are the Son of God, you can just jump from this building. The angels will catch you, everyone will see it, and they'll know you are the Son of God." But Jesus knew you weren't supposed to test God like that. So he refused. And the devil took him back to the desert, where he wandered some more, hungry, tired, thirsty, until the devil reappeared once again and took him to the tallest tower, the tallest mountain in the world. There, they looked over the entire world. And the devil said, "You know, all of this can be yours. I can give it to you. All you have to do is follow me." What would you do? I see someone shaking their head. If you could have the whole world. No? Well, Jesus knew that the whole world did not belong to the devil. And so he refused. And the devil took him back to the desert, where he was cared for then by angels. You see, he had passed all 3 trials. Even though he had spent 40 days and 40 nights in the desert, he survived, and he came out showing that he was God's son. Today, our Christian friends celebrate those 40 days and 40 nights in a season called Lent. They knew that Jesus suffered in that desert, not being able to eat or drink. And so they decide to give up something as well. Sometimes they give up something they love, like coffee or candy. Sometimes they give up something like a bad habit, like biting their nails. But I wonder and I forgot to mention that this season, this 40 days and 40 nights, did I mention that was called Lent? Okay, I couldn't remember. But I do wonder, what is Lent then to a Unitarian Universalist? I think those of you who are going to be in the service today will probably hear. And my friends who are going to join me in our classrooms, we're going to do something else. Let's go do that.
This is the time in the service where we share our joys and sorrows. There's an awful lot going on in the world today, and not all of it is very good. We have earthquakes, we have social turmoil, we have social repression and government overreach into personal lives. We have attacks on our culture. We have attacks on the culture of people who have been marginalized. We keep those in our thoughts and our prayers and hoping that we can do something about that. The water before you represents the love of our community. And the stones we drop in this water allows the love of our community to amplify our joys and comfort us for our sorrows. So now, if you're willing and able, if you will come up from the sides, and you can drop a stone or a couple of stones in the water for our joys and our sorrows.
Community. One, for all the joys and sorrows outside these walls that go unmentioned. Second stone, for the joys and sorrows that we hold closely guarded in our hearts that have gone unspoken. And a third, for the brokenness in our world as we search for ways to be agents of wholeness by placing ourselves in the breach. Amen.
And now it's time for our offering. Our Share the Plate this month is with the Greater Cincinnati Coalition for the Homeless. We had a presentation earlier in the month about the coalition, and we know the wonderful things that they have been doing for many, many decades. It is actually the very first local coalition for the homeless in America. And they have a proud tradition, and they have been doing a lot as advocates for the homeless. Giving to First Church is easy. You can text GIVE to 513-717-7373, or if you have access to our Breeze member account, you can go to the Give Now section of that Breeze account and click there and follow the prompts to make your donation or your pledge. You can also go online at www.firstuu.com and click under the giving line. And lastly, you could mail a check to 536 Linton Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45219. And if you're making a donation to the Greater Cincinnati Coalition for the Homeless, you need to put GCHC, Homeless Coalition, yes, GCHC in your memo line. So, with that, we are going to have some very special music for our offertory, but I want to make mention that the flowers are given by Doug Gerard, and they're quite beautiful. And Doug said, I want to recognize the longer days and the sightings of the crocus and the sounds and smells of the spring in the air. With this recognition, let our hearts be hopeful and lighter. Thanks, Doug.
What the world needs now is a love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little love. What the world needs now is a love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone. Lord, we don't need another mountain. There are mountains and hillsides enough to climb. There are oceans and rivers enough to cross, enough to last till the end of time. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. No, not just for some, but for everyone. Lord, we don't need another meadow. There are cornfields and wheat fields enough to grow. There are sunbeams and moonshine enough to shine. Oh, listen, Lord, if you want to know what the world, join us, is love is true. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. You know what the world needs now. Lift your voices. Love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. World needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing that there's just too little of. Seems so easy. It really is that easy. We just need love, that's all, for everyone. And I'm so very grateful to the preschoolers, to 5th grade, that put the poster out there to remind us we still have a dream. We are becoming a beloved community because we have love. That's all we need. Too little. Love for everyone. Thank you.
So, as we heard from the story for all ages, this coming Wednesday is Ash Wednesday, and it marks the beginning of Lent. I picked up the practice of Lent from my mother. She's recognized it for as long as I can remember. Maybe our surroundings as a family have had more than typical exposure to the practice because of living in the predominantly Catholic West Side, because of my dad's upbringing in a Catholic family. Either way, it's something that has become a crucial part of my spiritual journey as an adult. The story of my spiritual development is a story of many Lents. The first one I remember observing as an adult began during the February of 2013, when I was living here in Cincinnati, attending church here, and working as a community organizer. I decided to give something up for Lent. That year, it was alcohol. Other years, it's been things like coffee, certain apps on my phone, or astrology. Lent is the most significant atonement practice in the Christian tradition. It's the roughly 6-week period beginning with Ash Wednesday and ending at Easter. It's a tradition with a long history, many, many layers. And it's been part of the church since at least the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, and has evolved in multiple directions since then. Different Christian groups and different individuals have very different relationships to it. And as you use, it's not required, but our tradition still does offer us guidance and inspiration toward this practice. It does not require us to do it at all, but it invites us in its general direction, whatever that might mean for each of us. From the beginning of its history, the central practice associated with Lent has been fasting. The mythic origin of Lent, like we already started to hear this morning, is the story of Jesus' time in the desert before beginning his period of teaching, a narrative that is included in the Gospels of Mark, Matthew, and Luke. In these accounts, we learn that he went into the desert and he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. The typical modern practice of Lent, the Lenten sacrifice, giving something up for Lent, is modeled from fasting. In seminary at Methodist Theological School in Ohio, I took a class about the spiritual disciplines. We practiced the discipline of fasting and explored it in depth. But my professor, Dr. Valerie Bridgman, made it very clear that this did not necessarily mean fasting from food. The topic of fasting can bring up painful associations with our relationships to food and to hunger, and this is important to listen to if it does. Fasting from food is only one form of the fast, and it is the archetypal form. A fast is the voluntary denial of an otherwise normal function for the sake of intense spiritual activity. This certainly does not mean that the thing being denied is a bad thing. Far from it. It is simply something we would normally include, and instead we're taking it away. For example, one of the forms of fasting that has been most important in my journey has been different variations on an information fast, fasting from the habitual ways I take in information. The medieval mystic Meister Eckhart said in the 1300s that God is not found in the soul by adding anything, but by a process of subtraction. In the case of the fast, a regular practice is laid down for a period, and this allows the part of ourselves that normally would be occupied with it to rest. It clears space in ourselves and in our lives. Lent is an atonement practice in the Christian tradition, but be careful to remember that that does not have anything to do with punishment. It is one in which we have the opportunity to examine our actions, our choices, our patterns, and by clearing this space, to sow the seeds of transformation in them. It's an opportunity to wrestle with the unknown at the heart of our struggles. It's an expression of our desire to meet that unknown with faith. The practice begins for me in the days leading up to Ash Wednesday, in the self-searching, surveying the scene, and the decision of what to give up. I ask myself, what in my life, what in me needs to rest for a time? But sometimes this decision is not so clear, and that's okay. When Lent begins, I begin anyway. In the Sermon on the Mount in the book of Matthew, Jesus talks about 3 practices, and they are the 3 main practices associated with Lent: almsgiving, prayer, and fasting. About fasting, he says, "When you fast, do not look somber as the people who are being hypocritical do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it will not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." In the Christian tradition, the urge one feels toward their chosen object of fasting is what refocuses again and again on the intent behind the fast. So for the year that I gave up astrology for Lent, this does not mean that 0 astrological images and symbols entered my mind for 40 days. It means that when I noticed I was thinking about it, I redirected my mind from it and opened up space. I've understood this more deeply as I've learned about the Buddhist concept of refraining. The concept is based on awareness of the urge to act impulsively to relieve discomfort, the urge to scratch the itch, to reach for short-term symptomatic relief of the unease that is a near constant in daily life. The desire to avoid pain shows up as the urge to be seen as important, to be liked, to be right. This unease has its roots in the uncertainty that grounds our existence and the natural, very human fears that arise from that ground. Refraining is stopping in that moment before the reach toward the short-term symptomatic relief and refraining from it. Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron talks of the importance of equating refraining with loving kindness and friendliness toward ourselves. The refraining brings with it in the same moment an immediate sense of awareness. It opens up space, and there is great opportunity in that space. Instead of directing oneself to outer rewards, we're invited to practice remaining still with loving kindness in the presence of that unease. It may be painful. It is often painful. But it is the real present. And by being truly present to it, we recognize that we are agents in our lives and not beholden to habitual patterns of reacting. The future is unknown, undetermined. In the biblical narrative, when Jesus went into the desert, he was tempted by the devil, a metaphor for the processes that can hook us into seeking short-term relief from our unease. Those processes manifested in Jesus' temptation as the temptation to grasp for power, for status, for glory, and influence. And he refused. He said, "Go away, Satan." And that is the refraining. When you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face. Allow that space that you have cleared in yourself to stay still and observe what will come to fill it. When Jesus went into the desert, he went, in the words of Matthew, because he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. A wilderness period in our lives characterized by subtraction, can happen at any time for any length of time. These periods happen over and over at different scales and moments simultaneously. But Lent puts this process of subtraction on the calendar. 40 days is a significant number in many traditions, and it's not a coincidence. This is the length of the cycle of the planet Venus, when, in astrological and astronomical language, it stations retrograde as an evening star, and after a few weeks disappears from the sky to be reborn again as a morning star. It happens around every 18 months. This process has been interpreted in many traditions as the descent of the goddess to the underworld, to be reborn again, the transformation of the form of divine love. A 40-day wilderness period completely separate from the Christian liturgical calendar. Lent is tied to the lunar cycle, always beginning around the time of the new moon and ending at Easter close to the full moon. In all of these ways, Lent is one of the sets of human symbolism that interacts with the calendar, so that it is not just something that orders our time, but something that weaves beauty and meaning into our sense of time as well. It brings the offer of the desert, whether I think it's the perfect timing for it or not. And there have been times when I didn't think it was good timing. I felt I already had enough deprivation in my life at the time, and I only wanted to do the addition parts of Lent: the prayer, the almsgiving, the focused study, the positive intentions. I gave something up anyway, and I was grateful I did. Remember, you are dust, and to dust you will return, are the words spoken at the imposition of ashes on Ash Wednesday. The subtraction of the fast, when done with faith, helps me to grasp the earthly boundaries of myself. It helps me sense my limits, and in that, to embrace the value of that self. We don't have to put a lot of pressure on it to practice Lent. Surely every Lent is not an impressive experience for me, resounding in its transformative power. But like other spiritual disciplines, simply doing it is a gesture toward the faith that lies behind it. The point of Lent in the Christian tradition is to ponder the central mystery of the Christian faith in preparation for Easter. In the Unitarian Universalist faith, this central mystery is often understood to be love. Process theologian and Unitarian Universalist Charles Hartshorne describes love as the divine beauty that moves the world, that with which life has a meaning, without which it does not. There is nothing higher than love. Beyond one form of love is only a superior form of it. Process theology holds that our lives and our worlds are open-ended, unfolding into time in every moment unfinished and full of possibility, and that God, as love, is present with us in time. Lent is one of many practices that creates space for us to see how the divine acts into this possibility. Such presence, such action, is a reward that is given in secret. Like in the Venus retrograde, we prepare ourselves to witness the transformation of the form of divine love. For all of us, always, it is a blessing to have our understanding of love renewed, to rediscover it in a higher form that reaches beyond what we knew to be possible. Whether we observe Lent or a different practice of refraining, for there are infinite pathways, may we open up space to hold this renewal and let it become part of us. And now, please turn in your hymnal, singing in the living tradition, and stand as you're willing and able. We are going to sing 194, Faith is a Forest, which is written by Shelley Jackson Denham, who also grew up in this church. And now, we will extinguish our chalice by repeating the words on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
I have one last announcement before we have our postlude and the slides. This afternoon at 12:45 at St. John's Unitarian Universalist Church, there is going to be an information session on the Article 2 Commission of the Unitarian Universalist Association. So if you want to learn more about what the Article 2 Commission has been doing and the rewriting of that section of the bylaws, this is an opportunity for you to get that information. We're also going to be sponsoring on March, I can't remember the date now, where Reverend McCarty is with us again. He is going to lead us in a discussion of the Article 2 Commission, and that will happen later in March. I think it's March the 12th. So keep that in mind. So if you want to know more about that, this is the opportunity to do it at St. John's Unitarian Universalist at 12:45 today. Thanks.